Welcome to Ion Foxborough. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome my former Boston Herald colleague and multimedia star,
Oh,
Andrew
stop.
Callahan.
Stop it.
Hi, Andrew. How
Hey,
are you?
Karen, happy Monday. I feel like I should have started with hello, Karen. I don't know how many other people have done that. Maybe
We had
Rob,
a few,
because
actually.
you had a few. Okay,
You're
good. I'm
not
glad I could
original on that.
could join the chorus. Hello.
Even the man himself.
Good, good.
Um, well, I did you have a nice Christmas, I hope?
I did. I think you've already asked me that, but we'll pretend for the good folks that I have not told you that we had a very good Christmas, both sides of the family, a little bit of driving, and just like you, back down to Gillette on the 26th because it's a work week, just like this week. But, what would we rather be doing than writing and talking about football? So all good.
Yeah, we were there Saturday for the latest horror show performance of the Patriots. Um, there's so much to talk about. There's so much going on, or potentially uh, that might go on after the final game or even during the final game. I would love you to play armchair owner, right? Andrew Kraft. And what would you do to fix this mess?
It's a great question because I think it's one where you have to take so many different variables into consideration. Because look, the record is bad, but the reason that the Patriots have been, pilloried so far this year is not that you only won 3 games. Like largely, this is what we expected. It's the process has been so bad. You've had two separate 6 game losing streaks. So I'm going, how deep does this dysfunction go? How organized are we with the coaching staff where Jerod is saying one running back is going to start to the local media, to the national media, and then another guy starts last Saturday against the Chargers with the front office? Why did we miss so badly on Ladd McConkey? An obvious pick. Look, everybody misses, but this is a top down failure, complete system failure. So what I want to do is understand how deep does that go? Because that will then determine, do I need to pull out everything by the roots with the coaching staff and or the front office, or is it just pockets? Because you can make an argument, a guy like Alex Van Pelt, who's received as much criticism as anybody, has actually kind of done his job. He's developed Drake Maye, and this isn't to defend Alex from certainly questionable play calling, and my brother, cousin, whatever in this instance, Jonathan, certainly knows about that. But I think where I ultimately land once they do that full on investigation, which hopefully has been going on all season, is I need to know by the end of this week if through back channeling, if Mike Vrabel will be the head coach of the New England Patriots in 2025, if I match his salary, allow him to build his own staff, and we can find some sort of middle ground about what to do with the front office. Because whatever Jerod Mayo will be in the next few years, I don't think will be to the level that Mike Vrabel has already established himself as a head coach in the National Football League, coach of the year, going to an AFC championship game, going to the number one seed in the AFC. Like, this is a floor raiser, a guy who's available, has a winning record as a head coach, and will be better the second time around because he'll have the best quarterback in Drake Maye in this hypothetical he's ever coached before. If Mike Vrabel says no, then there are a lot more options on the table, but that's my starting point. Top-down investigation, calling Mike, negotiating as best you can, illegally, granted, and then moving forward, obviously, next week when changes need to be made.
Andrew did write a column saying as such, advocating for Mike Vrabel in wake of Saturday's loss. Um, is it mostly, again, because he's kind of an established coach who knows what he's doing, doesn't have to learn on the job, has a familiarity, having played here, understanding the crafts, the fandom, and all of that. But as you said, it's important for him to be able to have his staff, the people he wants in place. Uh, and I don't know if GM qualifies in there too. But how important in terms of Rabel is who he brings in as the offensive coordinator, play caller, or if somehow he decides to keep Alex Van Pelt. Where do you sit on that?
Yeah, it's exceptionally important, Karen. And I think one of the most important, or I would say impressive parts of Mike Vrabel's early tenure in Tennessee wasn't the fact that he maintained a winning record. Again, going through Marcus Mariota, Ryan Tannehill. Last couple of years from Malik Willis and Will Levis, and they lost more games than they won. But he knew how to pick an offensive coordinator. Matt LaFleur, okay, Arthur Smith. And that's the biggest part. If you're a defensive coach and you understand your blind spots, you need to be able to identify talent with coaching in a way that you're supposed to with players. Mike's done that. And I understand that, that connection with New England that everyone's talking about, and people spin the other way and flip and go, well, why aren't you just finally looking outside New England? Why can't we do this differently? Look, Mike Vrabel's not a Patriot anymore. It's been 15 years since he was employed by the Crafts. He was here for 8 years. So he spent almost double the time outside of New England. And if you include the rest of his playing career with Pittsburgh at the start, it's been more than double the time in the NFL than he spent outside of New England he has in Foxborough. That experience, that networking, that understanding of different coaching philosophies and techniques and styles is what makes him not only a top head coaching candidate here, in my opinion, but anywhere else in the league. So the Patriots would be lucky to have him. And that offensive coordinator piece is the biggest hire he will make if and when he gets a job or a job anywhere else.
Would Vrabel get to dictate the GM he gets to work with?
No, dictate is too strong a term for me. You want input there. You need a relationship there. And I think that's what you saw in Tennessee, even if things ended on quote unquote good terms. Like they had a new GM who replaced John Robinson, who he came in with, or might have actually been there. But either way, they had a connection to New England, right? Rand Carthon comes in after Rand's first year, Mike's gone. And I don't think ownership at Tennessee is this like sparkling, sterling example of how to run a business, let alone an NFL franchise. But I do think he would need to have an established connection with Elliott Wolf if Elliott Wolf is going to stay, or you find someone who he's worked with before, because you cannot have competing interests here with how the franchise should be moved forward. Otherwise, you're just going to have the vision, if it's at the top, trickle down everywhere else.
How important is it for the Crafts, you as the owner,
Still Andrew Kraft here? Okay.
and the Craft, to kind of have your ducks in a row? I mean, I wouldn't arbitrarily just kind of fire Jerod or get rid of without solutions either almost in place or pretty much in place. Yes, I think they blew their opportunity to go out and interview a ton of people uh, by basically anointing Jerod without a search. Same thing with Elliott. I almost think, as you said, they sort of have to be doing all of this stuff right now.
Yeah.
People who are available and people who are out there. They can't wing it or go about this in a, pardon my language, half-ass manner. uh, and again, after like blowing it the first time, they need to get it right this time, whatever it is they do.
Yeah, I agree. And look, it's not as easy as I just made it sound, right? Because Brian Flores' ongoing lawsuit against the league, which alleges basically discriminatory practices when it comes to hiring head coaches, and you go down to the coordinator list, they abide by the arena rule tool, makes every franchise afraid of being caught back channeling, as I just suggested. You need to be artful about this. But I think given the history, given the relationships, given the intermediaries that exist that you could go to and at least have plausible deniability. And look, I think the Rooney Rule is in place for good reason. It's because ownership does not hire, as you would suggest, entirely on merit, and you need to give more people opportunities to prove themselves, or those people don't even get in the door. But my point is, if you think every team still faithfully abide by this rule, you're kidding yourself. Look at the Patriots' last searches, right? Whether it was Elliott Wolf, then bringing in some minority GMs after the draft to come and sit down for whatever those interviews were, whether it was the offensive coordinator search Belichick ran, which was a joke, with Adrian Clem and Sean Jefferson. Just come on in, Keenan McCart. I'll do a Zoom. We're going to hire Bill O'Brien, but maybe we'll give you a job. Like, that's what they need to do. It will be difficult, but I do think the Crafts, to your point, the real question, you need your homework done now. They suffered because people turned them away last offseason and because they got down to their 12th candidate for an offensive coordinator search, which generally means you're thorough. But what that also meant is other people were telling you, no, you can't lose that much time this time around.
Totally agree. Outside of Vrabel, is there any other available coach who's out there now that you would strongly consider? Let's say it doesn't work with Vrabel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
It's a great question because I think everyone needs to, including people like myself who write that, consider those options. The craft certainly we need a plan B, C, D, because whatever we do need to act quickly. Brian Flores is a name that I've considered, but when you have a rookie quarterback like Drake Maye and you consider the treatment that Tua Tagovailoa endured with Brian Flores, and forget if you want to dismiss the head coach of a football team telling a quarterback, you suck, you don't deserve to be here, and the culture that kind of flowed out from Miami, even as they were still kicking the Patriots' ass and the Patriots are better than the Dolphins were under Flores, you can't have that anymore. The other issue I would say is who is he hiring as an offensive coordinator? Now, Flores is an outstanding coach, but that approach to a rookie quarterback really concerns me. I like his experience as a former head coach, as a coordinator. Certainly, what he's doing with Minnesota is freaking magical. I wish I could just watch 60 minutes of that defense like Sam Darnold. It's great. Justin Jefferson, thank you. I just want to watch the defense blitz from every angle, and this has been a lot of fun. Aside from those two, I don't see a candidate. And people might go, why not Ben Johnson? Ben Johnson as an offensive coordinator is excellent. I don't know, though, how he sets a culture, how he runs a building, how he is as an administrator,
Same as
right?
coming in first time. You don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And the job of head coach is so different from a coordinator in a way that I think people generally still don't understand. And I didn't, even an early part of my career. The best analogy I can give, if you're a coordinator, you're like the leader of a department at a high school, right? You are teaching English, but also running how everyone else teaches English. If you're a head coach, you're a principal. You're not doing as much hands-on teaching and instruction, and obviously in this case, coaching that you are. I don't know how Ben Johnson is as a principal. He's the best English teacher maybe in the league. That's cool. He's got a lot of great students to work with, but it's a different job, and I want someone with experience, and it's not just the New England connection. But Flores and Vrabel to me are top of mind, and then I might run it back.
Is this a situation where you move on from Mayo no matter what, or is it a
No.
situation where you move on from Mayo if the right, you can land the right guy?
Yeah, it's the right guy. And zooming out, any employer is going to be looking for upgrades if they're active at all times, right? And what is Jerod Mayo? Not an employer, he's an employee. Mike Vrabel is a better option. As soon as you have a better option out there, I think you should work to upgrade if you're an employer, someone running a business. This is not even personal to Jerod. If the Herald suddenly said, Karen wants to come back from MassLive, we don't have a space on the staff, Callahan, we got to let you go. I'd be like, what the? But some part of me would understand. Like, you're a legend in the market. Okay. And so with this case, I don't think you can just fire him because to me, that's not a solution to your problem. It's scratching an itch from an ever growing and persuasive mob that's become the fan base and pockets of the media. I'm not firing Mayo just to fire him. I'm firing him to upgrade a coach who has underwhelmed me in a way that I don't even think his growth next year, and he would probably be better in year two, can catch the likes of a Flores or a Vrabel right now.
We just got off a Zoom call with Jerod Mayo in talking about the upcoming last game against the Bills, where the Bills are obviously going to mail it in. They have the number 2 seed locked up. They have nothing to play for. You might see Josh Allen for a series or two, if that. The question is what the Patriots should do, because right now they're sitting with the number 1 pick. If they lose, I believe that assures them
Yeah.
of the number 1 pick. So I know that the purpose or Jerod's purpose, they want to put their best foot forward, their best showing. They want to try and win games. My feeling is Joe Milton should start that game. I don't know what yours is. So why don't you tell me?
Yeah, I'm with you. And look, it's honestly difficult to say, even as someone who went, viral or whatever extent earlier this season for briefly losing his mind in television and said, I don't want to see Drake Maye start at all. This offensive line is a joke. And comments I later walked back in Mayo fashion and regretted. But the point is, what does this game matter relative to what the number one overall pick could bring you? And I'm not talking about Travis Hunter. I'm talking about a bounty of assets where even if you get two teams, the Giants need a quarterback, The Raiders need a quarterback and are going to be under a ton of pressure from ownership to make that happen. The Titans probably need a quarterback. Teams that are behind you, you get a couple of them bidding, you flip that number one pick into a one this year, maybe a one next year, at least a second and third this year. And with those picks, you can fill all of the needs you have on the roster, which aside from Drake Maye might be every single position if we're being honest in the long term. Like the only other blue chip talent in this roster is Christian Gonzalez. So if Joe Milton starts, you're obviously tanking. There's a shame sometimes in that. But if fans ask themselves what matters more right now, and even if you do win, okay, you still have a top five pick. It's not a calamity, right? But
No.
I think you play Milton, you see at least what you have in him, at least for a little bit. Sit Drake Maye, who might have endured his second concussion over the weekend, by the way, and you move forward in the best interest of the franchise.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I would trot out Javon Baker, Jalen Polk. I mean, again, under the guise of we still really don't know what they are. So maybe they can do something against Buffalo Scrubs,
Yeah,
we'll
wink, wink,
see.
right?
Um, are you trading down at all costs? Say they're it's not the number one pick.
Mm-hmm.
Say it's like number three, four, five, something in that neighborhood, which might be where they are should they win. Do you trade down at all costs, or if Hunter is there, you take him. End of story.
No, I wish I could give you a better answer just because I haven't studied him, and I think people who are saying trade down at all costs, that's persuasive to me for the same reasons they laid out. Like you have a ton of needs, you need more picks. Going from 3 to 7 doesn't like scare me right now, but I need to see more of what the players are in this draft. And to be honest, I'm not even going to know for another month because I need a break from the season, which I think you do too. It's been a long year, but to me, that's where I would lean right now. I just don't know enough. And honestly, I might not even take Travis Hunter. That's the other part about this. Like he's a Heisman winner, best player in college football, first round talent at receiver and corner. I don't think I would play him both ways in the NFL, but I also think I might take an offensive lineman. What do they look? How do they fit? Because that's to me the biggest need right now, and the most impactful pick you could make. Not to mention whatever happens in free agency will dictate this. So just we'll dictate what they do in the draft and obviously what they do in free agency first. But all options on the table is where I'm at right now.
Yeah, we've heard that this isn't like the most bountiful draft, not the best draft, but again, I don't think that that necessarily means that you can't get good players or blue chip players, especially
Totally.
up around the top. You just said offensive line is your first need. How would you map out, say, the top five needs for them?
Yeah. Anyone who wants to rearrange these, I'm probably not going to have too much of an objection. Which in turn, I would ask if you don't like my order, don't object too strongly to me or come yelling at me. Offensive line, receiver, defensive line. I'd throw linebacker in there, and then corner. And part of this is not just the talent you have right now. You're like, why do you need a corner? You got Christian Gonzalez. It's a premium position, right? Like if you're winning in the National Football League, and I'm serious because I just spelled out National Football League instead of just saying NFL. It's a tell for every analyst. Um, you're not winning a lot of football games. So they need better players there. Like we saw, Isaiah Bolden can't play 60 snaps for you moving forward. So I'd start in the trenches and then move out.
Yeah, and it's like it's not like when you go down to number five, like that's you're just throwing in. Oh, I guess they could use another. No, all these five that you listed are almost like musts,
Yeah.
I would say. You know, and defensive line, pass rusher, edge rusher, however you want to, phrase it. They need all of those things.
Yeah, you could separate those out, right? D tackle. If Christian Barmore, let's say, can't play again because
Right.
he had to go back on blood thinners to obviously alleviate his blood clots, and I'm not a doctor, don't know anything. Well, you need defensive tackle as much as you do edge help because no one on the edge right now scares you. So that bumps corner off or linebacker off. Like it's like you said, needs are everywhere.
I want to talk a bit about the film review you put out um, post Saturday's game. Um, you said it was the worst loss of the season. I agree.
Mhm.
You called it a complete no-show. I agree. Um, but one of the things you pointed out in the course of your review, your observation, was that Drake Maye's play has dipped over the course of the last two games. Can you explain that? And is there a reason for concern?
Yeah, so the word I used was cooled. And I think there's an important distinction here to say just that there are a couple of things at play. Obviously, it's late in the year, right? Rookies tend to fade down the stretch. He's still dealing with the worst pass protecting offensive line in the league. And when you look at how they finish these games, he's at his worst under pressure late. And it's not just because they're playing catch up against good teams, it's that he himself is not responding to that pressure in the same way we saw earlier in the games and earlier this season. What are the reasons for that? I don't know. But you see it with his accuracy. This is his third lowest accurate throw percentage. You take out throwaways, take out the spikes. Okay. Just how often is he putting the ball where he needs to be? This was 66% of the time. Fine. Just like if your completion percentage was 66%, but not great. So to me, that's where I look and go, I think teams are catching up a little bit to him where they know they can apply a little bit more heat. And this is also a reflection of the starting cast, right? And you see that down the stretch of games. You saw it in Buffalo. You saw it in stretches against the Chargers. And the last thing I'll say is this: it's Kendrick Bourne got a lot of flack for lining up at the wrong place on the first snap of the game. And Drake's like, get over here. Hunter Henry's like, what are you doing over by me? Get over to the other side. 2 plays later, the Chargers double teamed him on third down. And this is where he rolls out to the right, and takes a quote 2-yard sack and the hit to the head and misses the next drive. You go, why are they double teaming Kendrick Bourne? And I don't think, and I don't know this, it had to do as much with Kendrick Bourne is sometimes a reliable option for Drake Maye. And Hunter Henry was covered very well by Derwin James. Drake May's tendency to roll right is something that teams I think are starting to take advantage of. Because anytime he does feel pressure, he's going in that direction. And there were instances later in this game where he rolled right, and there was nobody there. So those are the things that I think, whether it's because you're a rookie fading late in the season, they're so far behind right now, he's just inaccurate, and that'll happen sometimes, or teams are starting to catch up to his tape and his tendencies, as good as he's been. All of that comes together, and I think that's where you've seen a decline in his play, which is not a catastrophic drop off, but he's cooled. He's cooled off.
Just to point this out, Josh Allen always rolls to his right too, but he's gotten much better at making plays doing that. One other thing from your film review, you talked about them having trouble with picking up blitzes all season. And you had a line in there where you said they're still making basic mistakes. To me, I don't know. I don't know if you can totally lump that as a talent factor, or I almost think it's more of a coaching issue. Do you
Mm-hmm.
agree, disagree?
Yeah, I agree. And there was a style of blitzes that the Chargers ran, or pressures, that repeatedly gave them trouble. And part of this is Cole Strange is a new center. Part of it, does Drake May have the answers to this? Like he dealt with the blitz pretty well early on in the season, and talking about Drake. But yes, it is a coaching issue. Like, you have an illegal hands to the face or illegal use of hands penalty on the third drive. You have a blown run block on the second drive. You have a holding penalty from Hunter Henry and all these swing passes and screens that they use just as an extension of a run game, which, by the way, wasn't working again. Like, this is hand placement. This is identifying blitzes. These are basic fundamental things. It doesn't matter what Alex Van Pelt puts up on the board, or how far Drake May can throw the ball or create plays. If guys cannot do the basics of their job, it's like coming on this podcast and not understanding how to form a sentence. I could look and sound as entertaining as I want to be, but if I don't finish, no one cares. Like that's how it sounds. It's incomplete. It's bad. And that's what this offense is right now.
Would you anticipate, say they keep Jerod and they keep the two coordinators, DeMarcus Covington being the other one, would you anticipate changes on both sides of the ball in terms of staff?
Yes, 1,000,000%. And look, I brought him up so often it sounds like a vendetta or it's personal. It's not. This guy has been incredibly gracious and professional with his time, and that matters to me. Even if people don't see this in the outside and the media interaction. But Tyler Hughes is their receivers coach. Jalen Polk and Javon Baker this season have had fewer yards than Ladd McConkey did last Saturday. And that's not the first time Ladd McConkey's had more yards in a game. I think it's the fourth or fifth than they've had combined all season. You can't have that. So whether it's in New England or Chicago and Los Angeles or picking in the NFL market, if there's a group where the players are not developing and there are a lot of high draft picks, and you have fundamental mistakes, including Kendrick Bourne not lining up correctly on the first freaking play of the game, that guy's probably going to go. And then you deal with the interactions within the coaching staff. Okay. If the boss doesn't like you and there's cause enough to fire you, probably on your way out. And I'm not saying this is a fact, but there was a moment earlier this season where Jerod Mayo expressed frustration with the offensive line. Oh, we can't get the combinations right. There's no continuity, this and that. And he used the word frustration. Scott Peters, offensive line coach, another ex-player, hard-nosed, tough guy, asks, are you frustrated you just can't get the same combination too? His answer was, I don't have time to be frustrated. That to me set off a little bit of an alarm bells. And look, you have enough people, especially in a losing season. There's some friction or disagreements. It's natural. It's football. These are grown men. It's going to happen. But in an instance where heads have to roll, whether it's on offense like with those two guys or on defense with new guys who just came in, Jerry Montgomery, Drew Wilkins, from other organizations, yeah, I'd expect there to be changes.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard a little bit of veiled or not so veiled unrest from Keon White
Yep.
about his future in terms of, and it sounds like the coaching staff. He doesn't feel like he's being put in a position to succeed, whatever that is. He's not good at run defense. If you think I asked him if he thought the problem would resolve over the course of the next two games. He said no. And I mean, he won't, throw the coaching staff under the bus by name, but it's implied he has a problem with his coaches. You've obviously spoken with him as well.
Yeah, a lot of people did. And that willingness to speak his truth and that honesty, first of all, look, he's a young guy. There's a lot for him to learn, but I think is empowering, and we should appreciate the honesty he first shared with you about his future because you want to know what's going on. And these are the players that fans care about. These are the people that you and I cover professionally. So for him to not only doubt his future here, but be honest and go to a line, right? He said multiple times, it starts with me. I have to be better. He told me I feel disconnected. I've never felt less on the same page. And I go, disconnected from what? And he goes, well, I have to figure it out. So like part of it's vague and you just like, that doesn't mean anything. But
Yeah.
you understand that you speak long enough, he's circling around the same things. And it's coaching, it's his performance. And for a guy who started the season really well, and at some point, probably has to make some adjustments like we all do in our mid-20s in whatever career we're in. Um, it just shouldn't be this bad. And he knows it, and he's giving a voice to it and takes some accountability, which honestly, we haven't heard from everybody this season, including in that defensive line room.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It was somewhat, it was both kind of refreshing and troubling at the same
Yeah,
time, you know?
totally. Totally.
Uh,
And the fact that he stood by those comments, though, like, and you and I have talked about this, but I think spoke loudest because Jerod had said Saturday to Scott Zolak, not some gotcha journalist, not anyone who's anything but employed by the team or a team partner in 98.5, saying like, oh, yeah, we had a good talk. It's not what he meant. We're on a good page. Keon goes, no, that's exactly what I meant. Everything I told Karen is exactly what I meant and what I stand by. And even if he still meant it, the fact that they had a conversation and Jerod left with the impression that they were on the same page and Keon goes, nope. That to me is an inability to persuade one of your best players to even play along. That's a disconnect. If Keon doesn't want to say it, that's a disconnect between him and the head coach.
yeah, yet another one. Um, Before we close, New Year's is upon us, and if I'm changing your hat now.
Oh, it's a craft thing, right? Oh, if I got my fan hat on versus my
You're
owner
changing
hat on.
your hat now. I'm gonna pretend you're Jerod Mayo. What should his New Year's resolution be?
I think he needs to do the hard things better and more consistently. And we hear the word consistency from them all the time. It's not. It's like, okay, your problem isn't being inconsistent. It's a problem that you're not playing well enough. Like if you consistently suck, that's still an issue. If I'm still consistently late to dinner or when I come home, my wife's mad. Okay. I need to be on time. That's what it is. But with him, whether it's delivering tough messages to players or following through on things that he says so he doesn't have to walk things back, um, or coaching harder and involving more fundamentals into their practices because we know the fundamentals have lagged. And we know that Bill Belichick used to drill certain things every single day that were in pads to get home on those fundamentals. You need to do that. Okay. This cannot be a little bit of, and loosey goosey, I think, is too broad a term. But when I talk about the harder things, things that will upset your own players, your own coaches, and sometimes are more difficult in the media. Because I don't know about you, I get this sense sometimes he's a little bit too much of a people pleaser, like yucking it up with the Greg Hill show on Mondays. There's no reason for that. Like they're going to have you on next week. You can be a jerk. You can be curt. You can be short, even if that's a harder, more awkward thing in the moment, because it's in the best interest of the football team. And too often he's caught between his own instincts, which we very much learn publicly are not always the right decision, and
Yeah.
not wanting to kind of upset the apple cart. So you got to get better and do the hard things well.
Well, he's vowed to be better in year two, if there's a year two for him.
Yeah.
It remains to be seen.
Did you hear today, by the way? And I don't do this to just like hammer on the guy. But speaking of Greg Hill, and today our girl Mego subbed in with Wiggy. Like this is not the same old crew. He's asked about effort. The quotes that Daniel Akwala gave me. Guys are not, they're kind of quitting in the fourth quarter, is what he told me. He's like, no. Like, I don't think effort was an issue. And well, maybe the field goal block guys didn't get hands up
They
there,
didn't have
but
their hands up.
didn't have their hands up. And you kind of understand when the score is out of the way. And I would say most of, if the majority of, most of, if not all guys were playing, even if not some were trying to always make a play. What? You can't say effort's not a problem. Then cite an example where it was, and then go, most, if not all, guys were still going out there trying to make a play when it was 40-7. Look, we get it's all difficult, especially in a losing season. That's what the money's for. Try to make plays. And here he is saying, no, it wasn't a problem. But now let me tell you why it was. Like it's just makes you shake your head.
Yeah. I've shaken my head quite a bit over stuff that's come out of his mouth during the course of the season, but he has to learn. Or if the Crafts are convinced that he won't learn or isn't going to get better, they have to make a move. It's
Yeah.
that black and white to me, but it's something they are going to have to figure out, you know. Well, I guess we'll see going forward. Anyway, Andrew, my former partner in crime. You can read him in the Boston Herald. You can see him on NBC Sports. You can hear him on every radio show, and he does his own
Um,
podcast. Anything? Am I missing anything?
uh, no. Pat's Interference is a podcast you've been on multiple times, and you'll be on in the future because this is great. I love hanging out with you, even if we're yucking it up in the parking lot sometimes after practices or press conferences or games. But this is much nicer being at home in my comfy uncle sweatshirt. Shout out to my 1 month niece, Mira, first niece, first nephew. And yeah, no, this is a pleasure. And I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks so much, Andrew. I appreciate you too.